So, all right, we are recording, and today we have a very special guest, Scott Moody, also portraying Christmas Story. If those of you don't know that that reference, I hope you do. Only this is COVID style because he's wearing the mask. So that's kind of what we're going with. And he decided just to have a little bit of fun. And he is going to be running the show and discussing technology and senior living. Take it away, Scott Moody. I'm going to mute myself now.
Well, that was quick. Can everybody hear me? Good. Yeah. So the outfit, honestly, it was a gift from one of my daughters a number of years ago for Christmas, because I'm a big fan of the Christmas Story. I watch it like several times every year, and I laugh hysterically every time as if it's the first time. So this is Ralphie, right? And you remember the costume that the pajamas he got for even the glasses. But to be honest, I can't see anything on these glasses, so I may actually switch them in a minute. And you know, really, every time I've you know, seen Mike or kind of seen him on events like this, but also in person, he's often wearing some, you know, rather unique outfit. And I don't have too many unique outfits, right? But this happens to be one of them. And so I opted. And the reason I'm wearing a mask is, you know, just because I think it's so important, right, for the people that we serve. You know, even if you're not older yourself, even if you're not concerned, which you should be, but even if you're not concerned, right, we all have a responsibility to one another, particularly for the older adults and, you know, the people living with disabilities that our company serves. So I just wanted to really highlight that. It's very disappointing where we are today. It's a lack, you know, personal opinion of responsibility from a number of people. Wearing a mask is not that difficult. And honestly, democracy only works if we actually care about one another, right, and care for the greater good. So it's a minor inconvenience, I know sometimes, but I just wanted to kind of say my part. And even if we didn't serve older adults, I probably may have said something, but it is particularly important, right, for who we specifically serve. So, so for today, I thought, let me take this down now that I got my point across, right? And actually, let me switch my glasses. Actually, I'll actually disrobe a little bit here, just for you know, making the actual presentation. But so anyway, I'm glad you liked it, Micah, and you know, we'll have to up the competition next time. So you know, what I thought I would start with, per, you know, Micah's request, is a little bit about my background, right, in technology and my career, and just a little bit about myself. When I go through this, right, you know, I've been very blessed in life in a number of things, but one of the things I always want to make sure of is that, you know, I don't really deserve credit personally for a lot of this. Number one, of course, blessed, but I often think that, you know, CEOs, and particularly startup CEOs, get, you know, way too much credit for what's a team sport. You know, I think that is true in every aspect of our lives. And then the second thing is, you know, we'll talk about some, you know, highlight some of the positives, but that's what you usually hear from speakers: did this, did that, you know, as if everything is great. But in fact, yesterday or 2 days ago, I did a video cast similar to this with a gentleman named Scott Case. Scott Case is the co-founder of Priceline and a friend of mine. And he had asked me to come on in terms of how do people manage through this crisis, right? You know, you were successful in a prior company, right? You know, you have some level of success here at K4 Connect, right? You know, how do you do it? I always think about poor people sitting in the audience, right? Going like, you know, my life stinks right now. Like, you know, that's not happening to me, or this or that, right? And they're like, how come that person can do it? And it's almost, to me, a little depressing. It's like sometimes watching Facebook, right? Believe it or not everybody's child is as well behaved as they show on Facebook, right? Not everybody is on vacation except for you. And so the talk was actually in the, kind of Q&A. He titled it "The Dark Side of Being a Founder." Right. So I just wanted to highlight, that, as I talk about a little bit about myself. We'll talk about the founding of K4 Connect, right? Kind of our technology assumptions behind that and what we do. And then, open it up for questions. So I'm gonna, so let me go a little bit through a background first. Graduated from NC State. I'm now here in Raleigh a number of years ago. Actually, graduated one weekend. I didn't actually go to graduation. I had work that day, but I got married the next weekend, and then Catherine and I moved to Florida 3 days later. We had a one-night honeymoon at a local hotel because honestly, that's all we could afford. And been married a little over 40 years now, 3 children. And in fact, the new company, K4 Connect, actually stands for Catherine, Kelsey, Kristen, and Courtney, my wife, and our 3 daughters. I was really quite upset when my second daughter started her own company and she didn't call it S1, right? So just, I get no credit here. So anyway, worked for a bigger company out of college, new grad engineer. Harris Semiconductor rose up over 18 years, a number of different jobs, became VP, general manager of about a $200 million division, and then left that company and started a company called Authentech. So Authentech was a security company around fingerprint sensors. It was just started by myself and one other gentleman. He was generally referred to, frankly, as the smart guy. Raised about $70 million in venture capital, took the company public, and then in 2012, we were acquired by Apple. Believe it or not, to this day, we're the only public company ever acquired by Apple, which was, and at that time, we were their second largest acquisition. You now know our product as the Touch ID. So that, obviously turned out to be relatively successful, but I can assure you, right, the dark side part, there was a lot of ups and downs in that. And, we founded that company in 1998. Then you had the dot-com implosion in 2001, not, soon after the 9/11, right? And then we went public in 2007. And then, of course, logically, 2008 and 2009 happened, but you'll remember what happened in 2008 and 2009, kind of with the, financial challenges all over the world. So, there's something to be said, as I tell people, for experience. And so, I've personally been through things, like this before, but certainly this is, exceedingly unique. That said, after that company was down in Florida, I retired after that. I didn't very much like being a public company CEO. I'm an all-in kind of person. I was burnt out. Like I was crisp, right? I swore I would never work again, and I double swore I would never do another startup. There was just so much work. And so I ended up, Catherine and I retired here to Raleigh. As I said, I went to school here. We met in college. She has a lot of family here in North Carolina, which don't say anything, but I saw that as the negative, right? But anyway, so we ended up moving here. I was actually quite happy in retirement. People say, oh, you got bored. And look, I am supremely qualified at laying on the couch and like literally doing nothing. It's the only thing I'm actually relatively good at. And, but I was on a trip to Rwanda, and I've, been there, a few other times as well on mission trips. This was with a microfinance organization that I was with and on the local board of. And I just met somebody while I was there. She was an expat from Canada, went over right after the genocide to open up an orphanage, ended up opening something like 13 orphanages, and then eventually bought a small coffee shop, right? Turned it into a coffee shop and a bakery, and only employed battered women right, to teach them to become bakers. And then once they understood the profession, they could leave and form their own little micro bakery. And that's where we became involved, because we were the microfinance arm right behind those women. And so, to be honest, when you meet somebody like that, like, I was embarrassed, right? You know, here I thought I was doing all these good things and on boards. I helped any startup that wanted help. Look, I just was embarrassed, and I felt I needed to do more. And so I came home and I spoke to Catherine, and it's like, I'm not burnt out anymore. You know, I'm not dead yet. I still got energy left. And unfortunately, I don't know how to, I need to do more, but I don't know how to do much, to the point I made earlier. So maybe I know something about startups. I got lucky once. And what if we start another company, and if it's successful, we could use the proceeds to help others. And that was the idea. Never thought of an older adult or a person living with a disability. And the whole idea was to fund a very small foundation we have, right, and make it much bigger. And all our founder shares are actually part of that foundation. So that was the idea. And so we started developing something we now call Fusion OS, which is this whole idea of integrating, right, almost anything in your life into a single system. So think about devices, home or health, think about applications, services, even standalone systems. Think of it really as an operating system for where you live and work. And we had thought of, applications such obviously as the home, but hotels and enterprises and schools and so on and so forth, and bringing all of these disparate technologies and services and capabilities, right, all into one system, right, developing user interfaces depending on who needed the information. So you could think of in a hotel, right, where you might have kind of home automation devices in the guest room now, right, automated door locks, but you also have a reservation system, you have a building management system, you have all kinds of systems, all disparate, and the idea was to bring all of those together. So we really just focused on the technology. Now, I'm a big believer in kind of foundational technology. So if you ever use the Touch ID, it's an exceedingly easy product to use, right? To the point that you don't even know you're using tech, which is actually how tech should be. And, but, we had 230 patents when we were acquired by Apple. So it was actually really hard to do. And what I just described is actually very hard to do. And so, we were filing a lot of patents. Catherine and I were funding it. And then one day I had coffee with this guy. He was an advocate for the homeless. I took the coffee through a mutual friend. He described his advocacy. He asked me at the end what K4 did, and I told him how all these things would work together in a more convenient life and so on and so forth. And he was like, that'd be a great product for me. I have MS. Never really thought of that before, to tell you the truth. I'm embarrassed to say that now, given who we serve, right? But it's true. Then, and like most tech people, is that my dog or? Not sure. So anyway, we actually have a lot of the girls' dogs here right now, but I won't go into that. So, but as parents, I guess that's really what we do. Anyway, our daughters are obviously all grown right now. We spoke about it a little, right? Eric, myself and Eric for a little while. And then I spoke to my co-founder about it, the new smart guy. And we had coffee with Eric a week later. And as I started kind of the coffee and the introduction, right, Eric stopped me and he said, look, let me tell you guys why I'm here today. He says, right now I'm using a cane, but I'm not really sure how much longer that'll last. So when I wake up in the morning, the way I look at my day is I figure I have the energy for 1,000 good steps in my day, and how I use those steps defines the quality of my life. And you guys can make my life better. And so on a strictly, personal level, if I felt called to start a company in Rwanda, which I know sounds, strange to many people, but I did, then I knew instantaneously why. He left, Jonathan and I spoke, my co-founder, right? And we pivoted the whole company. I then had a second conversation with my wife that night. Actually, we spoke in between, but specifically about K4 is we're going to go broke. Like, I know nothing about this market, right? Nobody will ever fund us, but I don't think God called us to spend 20% of our wealth. And if it didn't work out, go back to happy retirement. I want to go all in. I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose all our money, and I'm going to have to get a regular job. But Catherine was exceedingly supportive. We went forward, and of course, you know, the company is, would like to think, doing relatively well right now. So that's a little bit about the background of the company. And then let me kind of share the presentation, and then I'll walk through. I'll have to do this quick. I have this exceedingly verbose. And so I'll try to do this quickly so we leave plenty of time, you know, for questions. And if anybody has any questions later, complaints, whatever, you know, feel free to email me at the email address that you see here. So, and if it's nice, I'll reply. If not, I'll just, you know, forget about it. Anyway, I will do my best to reply to everybody. So, you know, now we've grown quite a bit. We're about 70 advocates. I will say our term, I don't like the word employee, never did. We're a team. We call all our people advocates, right? Because everybody's job, right, in our company is to advocate for the end user. We are a mission-centered company. And so everybody is to advocate for that end user. I don't care if you're in customer success or member success. I don't care if you're in engineering, right? And if you do something and it improves the lives of those we serve and it doesn't make me happy, then you ought to quit this company, because we've obviously lost the focus on the mission. So we have about 70 people now. We've done relatively well. We have about 30,000 members. Our average member is 85.4 years old. It is all in senior living communities, which I'll talk about shortly. And we've raised, well, a good bit over this number now, but over 31 million, includes people like Intel Capital, Sierra Ventures, Ziegler, who's an investment bank in senior living, as well as groups like AXA. AXA is actually the second largest insurance firm in the world, based in Paris. And then RGA, probably a company you've not heard of, right? But it's in a top, it's one of the top 10 in St. Louis, one of the top 10 reinsurance companies, right? And then we also work with Silicon Valley Bank. So we're relatively well funded. Jumping back, let me just take a step back, if you will. When we first started the company, and before we thought about specifically serving older adults and people living with disabilities, this was kind of the thought process of, why do you want to develop this technology that integrates all of this stuff, right? Basically, it's no different than this phone, right? Integrating all of these and having a platform for all this integration, right? But do it, right, as part of a physical entity, a home, an enterprise, a school, a hotel, et cetera, et cetera. And so one was that technology was moving faster than ever before. That it's moving so fast, it's almost impossible, right, for people and companies to keep up with it, right, and absorb it and use it in their lives. And so I just see that trend in technology continuing to spike. Yes, there's some challenges right now in the economy, but what are the companies that are doing well? They're the technology companies, right? So it is a permanent part of our lives, and we'll continue to see that accelerate in future years, right? But all of these things are disparate, even on this phone, right? All of this data, right, and information is disparate. It's unique, it's siloed. And so, right, there is tremendous value in bringing all of that data together, obviously in a very private and secure way, right? But at the same time, there's tremendous value. It's the whole idea of 1 + 1 = 3. In this case, though, more like 1 + 1 + 1 + 1, right, equals a better life. And then finally, making the system a plug and play technology, right? Make it, you know, so I can always be plugging in the latest capabilities and unplugging things that I don't use, don't like, or kind of are worn out, right, and obsolete. And so how do you provide that? And then not radically change everything that you do so that my user interface, right, stays the same. And it's called multimodal, this idea of bringing in all of these disparate, you've often heard of the IoT, the Internet of Things, right, and home automation. But this is really not only doing that, but bringing in the health devices as well, bringing in your applications, bringing in your services, and in an enterprise, actually bringing in standalone systems. And it's that idea, right? So that was the idea, and that's how we started. And we actually went out and got the URLs early on K4 Home and K4 Hotel and K4 this and K4 that, right? But then, of course, I met Eric, and right, in a single night, we pivoted the entire company, and now we are very much a mission-centered company, right? Integrating the best in technology. We don't make these technologies, we don't make these devices, we just bring them together, right, to specifically serve and empower older adults. But we also, of course, do that in partnership with, I'm sure, a lot of people on this call, other companies and technology companies and organizations and communities, right, all around the greater good. So I will tell you, right, that, you know, highlighting the orientation around being mission-centered is that I have never started an investor pitch without telling those two stories of Rwanda and the coffee shop. You don't have to come to the mission the same way I did. We all have different beliefs, but you have to come to the mission, right? Because we all serve a greater good. And so I can assure you, right, no investor, and I've pitched to many investors, no investor has ever said anything negative to me. But I am sure there are investors that have left that room and went, what the heck is that guy talking about? That guy, like, he's crazy. But we have very, very supportive investors, right? And there's every advocate, right, in our company has come for that mission. So, okay, so now we focus specifically on senior living. How does the technology strategy really apply very specifically to the people we serve? At this point, I am still talking at a technology level. Again, it's this idea of bringing the best in technology into a single system. It's not only things, though, that are developed for seniors, right, but may have been developed for other markets, right, and very often are, but would be of great value to the communities, to the staff, and to the members, the residents, right, that we serve. So basically, we repurpose technologies that are maybe built for somebody else and bring them over here, lowering costs dramatically, right? But most importantly, really providing great service. And so many of these technologies are only single facing. They face the consumer. But, you know, again, our average member is 85 years old. And so what we do is we take a consumer app and make an enterprise app out of it. So the enterprise, if you think of it, on one end, there's the consumer, in this case, the member. On the other end is the enterprise. That could be the operator, that could be the staff, that could be the family caregiver, right? So that the information, right, is available across both parties, even though it is a consumer app. So for example, we're in the middle of distributing roughly 9,000 Amazon Alexas for free, working with Amazon, right? And they're all, that's a consumer product. Usually username, password, credit. Oh my goodness, it's very difficult for somebody 85 years old to integrate that. We pre-provision them all at our facilities here in Raleigh and Salt Lake City, right? And all they have to do is be plugged in. And we automatically, right, that person, that member, that's the end user, right, is automatically connected. What does that mean? They get all the Alexa services, right? You know, what's the weather, play music, et cetera, but at the same time, right, they're connected to the community and their fellow residents. Call a fellow resident, call the front desk, what's for breakfast, what time is dinner being delivered, et cetera, all of that information, right? And they don't have to do anything. No username, no password, no credit card, right, et cetera, et cetera. Through our apps and everything else, we don't advertise to the members, right? We're there to serve them, not prey on them, and that's not the good prey. Anyway, that's what we do. We really focus on our core competencies of the architecture, the ability to integrate multiple, very much focused on that member-centric design, UX, user experience, and UI, user interface, right? And then, of course, all the data analytics and intelligence, right? And then very open system, so it provides people the ability to plug and play, right, as new technologies come up, as new resources are available, budgets, et cetera, et cetera. So here's one of the things I would highlight, right, in technology nowadays is, right, technology is really seen as something that can help, whether it's that individual older adult, right, or in a senior living community, right, particularly as people are isolated. And technology is recognized as incredibly important. You can go out and buy all these disparate products, right? But then who's going to put them all together? Is mom really going to use 15 different apps to buy food and turn on a light and do this and do that and do that, right? Can IT staff put all of these things together into a single system, right? Staffs are hairy, right, and busy, right? So as you're acting tactically, which you have to do, right? You know, it's a very dynamic situation right now for the staff and the caregivers and for the people we serve, right? You definitely need to act tactically. I have a problem today I have to solve. But think about that, how that plays out longer term. Because what's going to happen is in 6 or 9 months when this moves past this, at least to some extent, right? It's like, well, man, I got all this stuff. Like, what do I do with it? Right? And then it's a waste. So technology has historically failed, you know, senior living. They're all disparate products and siloed data, right? There's very much a misvalued value proposition, in my opinion. How many times have you seen the commercial, right, that says, you know, put these sensors in your mom's home and monitor her and you have peace of mind? Well, let me tell you, everybody, moms stop like being monitored at roughly the age of 2 years old, and it doesn't change when they're 82, right? Nobody likes to be monitored. And so, right, we have this focus on how do we improve their lives. And when we improve their lives, right, they use it. They're more independent, they're healthier, they're more connected and happier, right? If you focus on that, then they use it. And then the staff, of course, has the information they need, right, to also support them. But it really starts with that end user, right? And then I mentioned this before, consumer versus enterprise. And that's what we do, right? We really integrate the best in technology. Starting with Fusion OS, I can give a 3-hour presentation on that technology, but actually nobody cares, just like they don't care how the Touch ID works, right? They just want it to work, right? The value proposition, we very much focus on simpler, healthier, and happier. How do I make, right, your life the member's life? How do I make your life easier and more independent? Think of home automation and all of these things, right? How do I make it healthier? It's not only connected devices, but it's pill reminders, it's content on healthy living, videos and the like, and then happier is more connected. We were doing video chat with family members a long time ago. Now residents can do video chat with one another, and we'll soon be adding resident to staff member direct video chat, right? So it's all part of the system. They don't have to download something else. You don't have to bring a separate tablet, right? Download it on their own mobile device, the PC, and of course, there's also voice. And then make an enterprise out of it. K4 Community, right, is for senior living communities, and K4 Home Care is, we're not in this yet, but for people we will support in their own home, usually providing, receiving some level of care from a family member or somebody professional. But K4 Community is our present first product. And by the way, what does a community look like? It looks like a hotel. And if you remember way back, we actually designed for that, right? So it was a very, once I met Eric, it was actually very easy. Well, it wasn't quite easy, but there was a natural transition technology-wise, right, to senior living communities. And this is what we call our value creation pyramid, right? It always starts with the tech. right? Anybody can tell the story, is what I always tell people, right? But it's the tech that makes it real. In the old days, you know, I won't go through how the tech at Authentech worked. I would love to, right? It was called TruePrint, right? But our case, our tech is Fusion OS, right? Nobody wants to see, right, the engine in a car, at least I don't, right? I just want to know it runs. Then it drives out that member level, first order experience, right? First order value. How do we provide value in their lives, right? And then when they use it, then the data is available. And I'll show you some numbers on that, right? And then that is allowing, right, for the connected worker, the connected caregiver to augment and support them, right, in serving that same member, right? And then, of course, it's logical, right? There has to be a return, right, for the customer, the payer, right, that senior living community, right, that health system, or you, if you've bought it for your mom, you know, once we're into at home, right? So there has to be some level of benefit. And again, I won't go through this, but, you know, everything from smart devices to applications and services to systems, right? We can integrate all into Fusion OS. And of course, then that's all available through K4 Community. And what I haven't shown here, right, is really the various user interfaces. So it could be mobile, it could be PC, it could be voice, right? It could be a tablet, it could be a smartphone, right? The information they need. So obviously the information a resident needs is different than, let's say, the executive director of a community, right, is different than the maintenance person of a community. But all of that data then is very specific for what they need. And then I'm pretty sure you probably can't see this that well, but this really looks at when we're fully integrated, right? So everything from the home automation capabilities to the wellness to all the engagement. It includes both the app and the tablet, right? As well as the voice at a member level. Roughly 85% of our members use our K4 Community on a daily basis. Like, that's an amazing number. So heck with this idea, older adults don't like technology. They don't like technology designed by a 25-year-old for a 25-year-old with slightly bigger font. But if it adds value to their lives, they'll actually use it. And you'll see numbers here on the right-hand side that are a little bit different, right? Depending if you're an assisted or independent, right? Assisted is usually using voice technologies more than independent. Independent is using kind of apps because they may have smartphones and the like. So let me just talk about the disruption of markets. And this is a slide deck, you know, for the most part I used a few months ago, but it's everything I'm saying here is just now accelerating, right? Technology is poised to both enhance and disrupt. It will either enhance what you're doing or completely disrupt what you're doing. But I don't think this is poised. It is now both enhancing or completely disrupting how we think of, right, the economy for older adults. Right, and you know, the world has been radically changing, right? I mean, there used to be companies around for a very long 5 years. It's more like 15 years. Companies are coming and going. You know, the Wilshire 1000, right, stock index, you know how many companies are part of that? 3,500. Well, not anymore. Getting bought out, they went out of business, they merged, right? It's all about moving forward. Now, right, technology, right, and here's some 3 great examples. All of them, or at least 2 of the 3, struggling right now, but so is the industry they disrupted, and my guess is they'll come back faster than the other industries, right? Probably significantly faster and do better. But you think of Uber, right? Taxis. It was all about maximizing, you know, that taxi being on the road 24/7, right? Different drivers, so on and so forth. $1 million medallion in New York, right? And all of a sudden you have Uber comes in. They don't have any vehicles, no assets, no nothing. They just, right, use technology. Now, one of the things that people always say is technology disrupts market. Technology does not disrupt markets. right? Business practices, right? And people disrupt market. You just use, right, technology to enable that different way of thinking about how to approach that market, right? Uber didn't invent cars. They didn't invent the GPS system for tracking those cars, right? They didn't invent the idea of an app. They didn't invent the idea of an iPhone. They didn't invent any of that. But they really brought it together, right, with a whole nother business methodology and used those technologies to completely disrupt the market. We saw the same thing in Airbnb and Alibaba, or here in the US, Amazon, right? Completely disrupting markets versus building another building. And of course, right, you know, the question is, do I disrupt my own market? Which I think people should do. And you see people doing that now, right? And I'll talk about a couple of those. But, or do I try to make my existing market, you know, last a little longer? And you take a look at this, right? I mean, you know, Netflix versus Blockbuster. And just yesterday, Netflix, you know, reported they added like a bazillion new people. They are kicking butt, right? Despite all of the challenges out there in the market. And so you see these companies, right, completely being disrupted. And this is the argument that this same thing, right, will happen, right, to companies. But it's not just upstarts, right, that, you know, can change, right? You look at Microsoft, right? I mean, everybody hated Microsoft 10 years ago, right? And they're in the top 3 of the wealthiest companies in the country. They have done exceedingly well, right, in transforming themselves. Lego, we all know Lego has been, you know, quite popular in the last few years. But, you know, it's one of those physical toys when many other companies just got wiped out. Amazon, Apple, and I like to think ourselves, are continually pressing on technology and rethinking instead of just trying to protect the past. And this, let me just highlight, talking about changing a business plan. This was the original logo for Apple. They didn't become the company they are, right? Even the logo they have overnight. They were a PC company. If you looked at, you know, they were called Apple Computer Company. But now, right, they're clearly a mobile company, and they are working very hard to become a service company. And that's how they think. They know, you know, you don't find these dinosaur companies that just die out. They are very entrepreneurial and aggressive about technology themselves. Of course, there's the others, the dinosaurs, right? Toys R Us or Blockbuster or BlackBerry. And it's, you know, it's horrible to see what I think a private equity firm that was incredibly poorly managed, in my personal opinion, right, has done to Sears and Kmart, right? I mean, Sears had every right to be Walmart, right, to be Amazon, right? You think about the Sears catalog. Why didn't that just become a website a long time ago? And so, right, again, it's not, you know, it's not just about being successful today, because there's other people coming at you. And what do you do to continually move forward? All of these companies had those opportunities and they blew it. So what's that mean for, you know, senior living, right? We've certainly seen, you know, transformation from, right? I remember going in, you know, to, I guess they call it a nursing home, right? Back in the 70s. And it was like an institution, frankly. I was in a couple of visiting people. And I mean an institution, like, you know, it reminded me of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest kind of institution. And this was just for senior living, right? The model of care and then wellness and then much more hospitality. So then the question is, what's next? And so, right, look, I'm going to flip through these first. It's a big market. It's not going to change. Senior living communities, right, in my opinion, are exceedingly well positioned, right, to serve and care, right, for older adults, right, once things open up again a little bit, right? They provided all the food. They protected them, right? People didn't have to go out to groceries and the like. There was healthcare right there. And you're seeing more and more of telecare, of telehealth, right? This is going to continue to be a very big market. And that's just not in the US, right? One of the reasons we have international investors, and I've actually spent some time in Japan in the last year, is, this is what, right, the percentage of older adults look like, right? People over 65, right, in 2015. Look at this map, and the darker it is, the more people over 65. Look at this map, right, 5 years ago. Look at this map 30 years ago. This is not unique to the US. And so if you're in business, right, you have to think of, right, the opportunity is a worldwide and global opportunity, right? And if you're in the business of, right, serving others in mission, it is an excellent opportunity as well to actually serve people. And that's what I like about tech. It's this opportunity, right, to touch millions and millions and millions of people. You think about how many people have used the Touch ID, right? It would be lovely, right, to be able to touch that many people worldwide, right, that are usually very underserved when it comes to technology. Of course, not to replace the human element, because as we have all seen in the last 3 months, I don't care how much technology you have, right? That human hug, that human caring, that human kiss, all of that is so incredibly important. So again, I mean, you have, for our market, right, and overall, you have evolving residents and expectations, even in home and caregiving support, right? Yeah, there's workforce pressure right now, but for other reasons, right? But in the economy 6 months ago, right, it was very difficult, and that led to a caregiving shortage, right, which you really see here. And that's, I think these are going to change a little bit in the next couple years, but that's tactical, right? And you still have to think strategically. Always be looking at, what are the macro trends? Oh, well, why don't we talk about those macro trends? So voice is really going to continue to be big, right? So versus just touch technologies, right? Voice technologies, and the combination of the two, as we saw on the earlier chart, right, really means there's certain things you can't do if you ask what's on a menu, or you ask this, or you ask that, right? Some of that information is better to look up, right, versus repeating, right? So, or reading. So anyway, we have seen voice to be very big, for every demographic, but it is really quite, useful. You can't offer, thousands of different capabilities and technology. They need to be curated in terms of what is specifically help them in their own lives. But it will continue to accelerate. Smart buildings, right, and the whole idea of a smart living community. One of the, easy arguments for a senior living community that might have K4 Connect is, there's some, been some bad press, particularly around nursing homes. I'm very empathetic to nursing homes. These are very, very caring people that were continually going in on the front lines and serving, right, these people that may have been sick, right, daily, and putting their own lives at risk. Yes, I know they've gotten some bad press, right? But the fact of the matter is, if you're in a nursing home, right, you're generally more sick. And it would be, in my opinion, it's almost like publicizing, hey, X number of people died in hospitals, right? And then everybody deciding, well, we don't want to go to a hospital because you died, right? And so, a real shout out to everybody that's worked in skilled nursing. Maybe not have shown the appreciation to that person that's going in there every day, but very much appreciate them. That said, there has been negative press, right? And so, right, when you're looking to move into a senior living community, right, how do you convince somebody, right, that they're safe, right? They'll be able to stay connected. And that's all technology, right? Video chat, right? Being in a smart building and knowing somebody is moving around, right? In a lot of places, right, we're now the resident check-in feature. The products were put in for smart home, right? The first order value is going to the resident. But we know somebody is up and walking around because lights are coming on and off automatically. We know somebody's up because we know that they just had a video chat with their daughter, or they just asked Alexa what was breakfast, so they're automatically checked in, right? No extra cost, no, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So this whole idea of a smart building where everything, right, is connected, right, is a much safer and a much more positive, and residents and their family members really see it as an amenity, right? I actually look at the home as an opportunity. When I talk about the home, sometimes the senior living communities are like, oh, that's our biggest competition. Well, then why don't you take advantage of it, right? Why don't you take these same technologies, right, and expand into the local community around you, plus all the services that you provide that they can use as well, right? Your pool's not always filled up, right? Once dining, your dining's not always filled up. Your gym is not always filled up, right? Your healthcare services can be provided to the, you know, surrounding, you know, Big C community. That should be seen as an opportunity, right, to extend your reach, right, for very likely the residents that will, or those members that will become residents of your community next time, right? A very natural step. I know people, I know the staff, I know other residents, I participate in events with them, right? I see the home really as an opportunity. There's going to be huge emergence of big data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. We're doing a lot of work right now with the Mayo Clinic. And then, as I mentioned before, right, technology was kind of a cost, right, in senior living community. Do I really need this, right? What's required by law, et cetera, et cetera. And now I think whether it's seen as an amenity or how to do things efficiently, right, how to keep up with all the regulations out there, right, technology really becomes a strategy, right, for in senior living, and I think as well in the home. Oops. And you can imagine, right, our technology is very similar, actually. It's still Fusion OS, right? But many of the services that are now being provided in a senior living community can be provided by that senior living community outside the community or using gig services, right? But again, we'll take something like an Uber and make an enterprise app out of it so that, you know, a daughter or a staff member could order the car for the member, right? The member knows because they see it as well, right? They know the car's there because it shows on their app, or a light blinks on and off, or Alexa announces it, right? The daughter knows that the, you know, versus now it's like, oh, mom, I called a car for you. It's outside, you know, call me when you want me to order another one to pick you up, and et cetera, et cetera. We bring those two pieces together. Right. And so allows the independence on one side, right, and the comfort on the other. And then, you know, finally, kind of what I see as technology requirements, you know, again, this is a little more focused on senior living given who we serve today. Right, technology is a strategy, really technology representation. There's a lot going on in the technology world. And it's, you know, important to bring in technology representation on the board, and as well as senior staff, right? The whole idea of open platforms so that you're not stuck with it, whatever you bought, right, for a very long time, even if it's obsolete. And technologies do go obsolete, and they go obsolete faster than ever before. Certainly, you know, partnerships and collaboration with many different companies. Look, we're a big believer. I came from this, you know, fingerprint sensor is a security device, right? Authentech actually provided much of the encryption technologies behind other products as well. Most people aren't aware of that. But, you know, we very much believe that the data belongs, right, to the resident, right? We don't sell their data. We don't sell them. We don't market them. But that using that data, right, to improve their lives is incredibly important, right? And it's this whole idea of, again, acting tactically, but thinking strategically, right? This whole idea of, you know, business process transformation. I don't think senior living, by the way, is going away, right? I think there's some things will change. I think it will continue to grow, right? But how you think about that technology-wise and the kind of the overall business, right, needs to transform before somebody else or some other technology comes in and does that for you. And I'm particularly thinking about how do you expand, right, outside your four walls. Certainly, I'm relatively new to senior living. That's been talked about for a very long time. How do you do that? Technology allows you to do that. It's no longer just about people and paper, right? But technology allows you to do that. And those services can expand, right, for everybody. And then, you know, of course, what we talk about, boy, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of stuff, right? You don't have to do it all at the same time. You may not have the resources, right, in terms of staff who is incredibly busy right now, but need help in terms of technology, right? You may not have the money, right? There's a lot of reasons why you're not going to do everything at one time, right? And so it's a transformation, it's a journey, but it's this whole idea of thinking, right, as everybody says, begin with the end in mind. Except in technology, there is no end, right? It's a continuous process that always stays in front of you. That's why you need to be thinking about that. And then finally, for our own product, we actually changed. We used to sell K4 Community as this big giant thing of integrations and so on and so forth. We've now broken it up, right? So that our customers can get what they need now, right? In terms of, hey, I need this now for, you know, engagement and video chat or voice or whatever it is. Right now, again, what we're showing here is product names, if you will, right? What we're showing here is modules, but these are really, right, how we integrate technologies and then make them available to a resident. So for K4 Community Plus, for example, is a resident app, but it's also used for guests, and we're developing a capability for prospects and future residents as well, right? But, you know, we integrate a lot of technologies as a part of that. So that's the module you'll see, but there are many, you know, video chat, et cetera, that are all, you know, home automation controls, all of that is integrated in that one app, right? And we've broken that up to make it a lot easier. We've done a lot around COVID. Our team has worked, you know, exceedingly hard. We saw it coming earlier than most. We actually launched something we called Project COVID 911 in late February, really to focus on what do people need now. And we really focused on existing customers. So anyway, it is a journey. And the whole idea, of course, is, you know, where do you start? In the end of the day, what does senior living look like, right? It's this really just this idea of living life well. That's what we all want. And we can use technology to serve older adults to help them do that, to help them lead a more independent, simpler life, right? A healthier life, right? And a more engaged, happier life. And so let me just give you one example of like, some of this stuff is like stupid simple, right? But it affects your whole life. So we put in thermostats, a connected thermostat. We don't use Nest. We integrate with Nest, but it's too expensive usually. So we integrate with lower cost. They're easier to use. We actually just worked with Johnson Control, right, to design one specific for older adults, right? Easier to deal with, big numbers and so on and so forth. Of course, you can control it with your voice. You can control it with your app, right? But it's just a thermostat. But I think many of you may know, right? If you sleep at a cooler temperature, you will sleep better. It is pretty well documented. Older adult, baby, middle-aged, it don't matter, right? Now, the temperatures they suggest, there's no way I'm sleeping at. I'd freeze to death. I'm cold all the time, right? But, you know, you change your temperature, put it down 3 or 4 degrees, you will sleep better. Well, by the way, we can do that automatically. And we can do that automatically because we control the thermostat. So you can let us know what temperature you want, right? It can be set, or you can set it yourself, or you can ask, right? At night, when you get into bed, the temperature starts to drop, right? Maybe an hour before you wake up in the morning, it starts to warm up so you're not freezing in the morning. It's very comfortable, right? Like super simple for us to do, right? But you will sleep better. And if you sleep better, along with eating and exercising, right? If you sleep better, you will be healthier. And if you are healthier, you will be happier. And the best thing for your health is happiness. It's a thermostat. It's like $50, right? So those are how, right, all these things coming together actually make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. That was mind-blowing of information, for sure. Can you stop sharing your screen at your convenience?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. I'm trying to get myself here. There we go. Wow. I don't know about you all, but that was, I'm like, whoa, a lot of information. So I'm going to
apologize for taking so much time.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You had a lot to share. Does anybody have any questions? I'm sure there might be some. So raise your hand, those of you that are sharing your screen, if you have any questions for Mr. Scott. None whatsoever. Oh, there we go. Carrie, go ahead. You should be able to unmute now.
Thank you so much. That was a fabulous presentation, and I really appreciate the Rwanda coffee story and bringing up people in very difficult areas. One thing I'm really interested in is your example of using the personal data to enhance the products that you're creating. And in particular, I'm also interested in the future of technology and how that can really support the older community. So even looking at what are some of the craziest innovation products that you've seen that you're looking at, how can you adapt them for senior living today? So
two things. I really, if I said that, we really look at using, right, the data, right, to improve their lives, right? And, you know, again, we don't sell it. We believe it belongs to the member, right? But unlike a Facebook or somebody like that, right? But you think about that, right? So if we see that somebody, as an example, it's not like we look, right? This is all done by software, but, you know, we see somebody's not sleeping well, right? Because they're up a lot at night, they're walking around, right? Motion sensors, whatever, lights are coming on, right? You know, then you can start thinking about, well, how can you help somebody sleep better, right? So that's where, like, the idea of, like, maybe you float, you don't tell anybody what to do, right, obviously, but you can float up an article, right, through content, right, that talks about, you know, being able to sleep better at a lower temperature, right, and then so on and so forth. So, or other ways, right, to kind of sleep better. Like, I've learned personally through some health issues, right, that, and I'm getting older myself, right, is that, you know, sleep is incredibly important, right? But that's just one example. It's a, you know, it's a very simple. The second, I'm sorry, what was the second part?
When you're looking at new products?
So to be honest, I get asked that question all the time, and that's fun stuff to look at. But communities are often in senior living or older adults' homes are devoid of technology. And some of it is like, you know, why get an exoskeleton or a robot from Japan? They got like a lot of crazy stuff going on over there, right? Versus just like something you can go down, buy at Lowe's or buy off Amazon, or, right? I mean, some of the simplest technologies actually would make just a huge difference in the people we serve. And I gave, not to repeat it too much, but the thermostat, right? But I do think, you know, and then of course, I'm not going to talk about health devices. I mean, it seems like every time somebody talks about an older adult, it's always about health, right? It's just, what we're trying to do is help you live your life well. And I joke with people, like, I'm 63 now, right? In 2 years, my name doesn't turn to patient, right? So I think, you know, you do see a lot of pretty interesting technologies in Japan. 40% of their population will be over the age of 65 in the next 20 years, right? So they have a real caregiving shortage, an older adult shortage. And I would say that they, you know, they really developed some interesting, being able to track people as well, movements, and using Wi-Fi and other kind of wireless technologies actually to kind of track movements, track breathing, track heart rates. You hear a lot about that stuff. It's a little bit early, and I think you know, in some cases has a little bit ways to go. But the fact of the matter is they all are very interesting. But 99% of technology that's available to other people today could really be put to the benefit of those we serve.
Thank you.
Anybody else have a question? Any hands raised? Those that are not sharing their screen because they don't want to share their face, do you want to use the reactions and go, hey, hand, or show yourself for a minute and just share what your questions are possibly? Or chat them? I guess everybody wants to be quiet. Okay. Well, if there's nobody else that has any questions, I'm going to stop recording.